So we're the last panel of the day, and this is actually not my first time moderating the last panel of the day at a conference. So I know that many of you are tired and probably still full from lunch or getting ready with that cup of coffee. So I would just encourage the panelists I'm going to ask to introduce themselves in a minute. If you find that you disagree with each other, let's just go ahead and get really heated. The more ad hominem attacks, the better. As much as we can do to keep a late afternoon audience engaged. I'll introduce myself after, but I really want to first go ahead and ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves and their background on the topic. But then, after we've all introduced ourselves, we're going to frame the issue of ad fraud and then hopefully ask a few probing questions. And we'll know how much of a success the panel is based on how little I speak. So my questions hopefully will be to promote conversation between the three of you. And like I said, the more you speak and the more ad hominem attacks, apparently the better.
So my name is Joey Wichman. I'm the co-founder and CMO of S&W Media Group. We're a specialized video advertising services provider, and we're working through programmatic and with direct partnerships with advertisers and publishers.
So I'm Noam Newman, and I'm VP of Mobile Strategy at Adtech Group. We also do marketing and advertising through programmatic platforms, mainly focus on mobile and video.
I'm Madi Bahar, CRO at Select Media. Select Media is a video SSP that's mainly focused about the Asian markets. We are providing publishers with a set of video tools to help them better monetize their traffic.
And I'm Zach Abramowitz. I'm the CEO of Reply All. Very quickly, a good friend of mine and I used to have very contentious debates by email. One day I said to him, wouldn't it be great if you and I could publish these conversations and allow everyone else in the world to follow like a fly on the wall? And he said, it'd probably be better if actually interesting people would publish these conversations and we could follow them. So we built a tool that is used on many websites, from TechCrunch to Sports Illustrated, to host curated conversations with experts. And our relationship to the topic is, we run campaigns for big brands through our platform and through our different channels. So obviously, as an advertiser ourselves, the topic of ad fraud is certainly a major issue. But with that, let me go ahead and ask you, Joey, why don't you kick it off, and we'll sort of collaborate on sort of framing the issue. But why are we having this panel? Why is ad fraud a significant enough issue that we're here?
Right. So, okay, you guys can hear me. In 2016, it was estimated by eMarketer that it was, I think, $12.4 billion total globally in ad spend was going towards fraud. And then a few weeks ago, they estimated that in 2017, it would be closer to $16.4 billion. So obviously, as advertising budgets increase in our industry, the more fraud there will be, right? It's an issue that will never really go away. It's going to be a continuous improving process from our side to kind of create a barrier to entry for all these bad actors in the industry. And at the moment, the barriers to entry are very little, and the rewards are very high, and the risks are non-existent, because it's very difficult to police people across the world that are hiding behind a lot of hacking abilities and things like that, where they're very impossible to find, basically. But yeah, it's a problem that will increase as the industry increases to different types of advertising venues and different types of ad formats, and it will always be there, always be a persistent pain in our sides, I guess. You guys want to add something?
Yes, I agree completely with what you said. There are measures that I think the industry are leaning more and more forward in some perspectives. Some media, checks the media is not fraud and so forth. It's kind of becoming standard more and more and more. I'm not sure that it's growing fast enough, and I do think it does create a barrier of entry, i.e. it prices out some of the players that actually want to participate, but this costs money to actually be in the game even. So I think there are measures taken, mainly in the big exchanges. I'm not sure it's fast enough, so I'm pretty sure fraud is going to also still increase, and like you described. But I do see, some sort of mainly like the big advertisers are requiring it. If you don't have the minimum standard of minimal protection, then you're out there. You're out. You're not going to play the game. On top of that, we see more and more sophisticated types of fraud. This is the cat and mouse game. So you put in measures like companies that's their job, but then the frauds are more and more sophisticated. So this is another angle that I don't think is growing fast enough, let's say.
How would you distinguish sort of simple fraud from sophisticated fraud?
Well, a couple of years ago, just a simple fraud used to be, I don't know, non-human traffic. But it got more and more and more sophisticated and elaborated in a way the hackers, or whatever we call them, are managing to execute this. And so the companies who supply defense or give a stamp that you're actually protected needs to increase more and more resources. And this, basically, they need resources, so they charge more money from whomever wants their certificate, which generates in a rethinking of the whole process. If I need to put money in order to check if the traffic I'm buying is fraud or not, then maybe it doesn't even back out anymore to what I needed to back out to. So this is it needs to be cost effective, and it needs to be something that advertiser or a marketeer can handle in order for it to grow. And this is kind of in between. I think today a lot of advertisers or people who want to advertise digitally are not able to actually use these tools because it just doesn't back out the way it should.
Well, my perspective on fraud, I look at it as it's like the war on drugs. It's not going to end. It's not something that's you're going to kill it in the industry, and one day we're going to wake up and there's going to be no fraud there, because there's big money involved, and when there's big money, there are people who want to abuse it and make easy money out of it. And like the war on drugs, it was easier 20 years ago. It's today difficult. And same today with fraud. 3-5 years ago, it was very easy to do fraud. The advertisers had less knowledge. The platforms in the middle did very little to combat it because everybody was making money out of it. And today, the market has been a bit more grown up, or a bit more mature. Advertisers are beginning to become smarter. Platforms are taking more responsibility. So are publishers, but it's still there. I don't know, White Ops published in December that they found 3 million. I don't know, yet to be proven. But I think the main issue today with ad fraud is regulation and standardization. There are too many companies. Everybody's trying to win the battle of ad fraud. And if you take any ad fraud player today, and you take the same traffic and you measure them with 3 different vendors, you will see 3 different results. And it's a problem today for everybody. And this is why it still needs to grow up another stage in order for it to be more efficient.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the war on drugs, because as I was researching the topic, I was actually in the background binge watching Narcos and watching Pablo Escobar and thinking that exact same thing, that I would even add to what each of you said, which is there's actually, not only is it difficult to police the quote-unquote hackers, but even if you get caught as a hacker, the economic upside is actually pretty good. Normally you're getting away with a quick slap on the wrist, and some other company that tries to stop hackers comes and finds you and says, we know that you're a hacker, come work for us for over 6 figures. So it's not only that it's difficult to police, but this really cuts into I think the main question that I want to ask you guys today, and I'm curious if it's something where there's unanimity or not. Is this going to be a situation where we're always 2 steps behind the criminal? Is it a situation where, yes, we catch cocaine at the Miami border, but really Pablo Escobar, that was like one little deal. He has 500 other deals that have gone on that day that were not caught. Is that the situation, or do we think that this is a situation where we can outsmart the criminals?
Right. So kind of like what Madi was saying, it's the war on, kind of like the war on drugs. It's an arms race. Okay, so you have these hackers that are creating all these innovative new ways to get around all these third-party verification vendors, and then you have the third-party verification vendors who are also hiring hacker-type people to counteract them and to increase their security on our traffic, right? So it's kind of like a never-ending vicious circle, because as long as they are, like if all the hackers or the bad parties in this situation are successful, what happens? They make money, right? So they have more money to fund their new innovative ways. Now, if a security company is successful in stopping them, they have job security, which probably equals a lot less money. So I'm assuming that the hackers will always have this incentive to continue their work, right? Now, in terms of the solution, which I'm sure that's probably your next question, and I can wait, but the way that I personally
Remember,
see
this
it,
works, ironically, if I speak.
yeah, exactly, right. Perfect. So in terms of the solution, it has to be a actionable, collaborative solution that we all kind of, from all different aspects of the industry, come together and identify these bad actors. And then once we identify them, we can move forward, right? So just like the IAB's initiative of transparency, supply chain initiatives, something like that, I'm pretty sure that's right. They were trying to identify throughout the entire supply chain, where are the problematic sources coming from? Which exchange, which network after that, which publisher after that, which source the publisher bought from. Publishers buy traffic sources as well, right, and users. And then from that point, you have, let's say, TAG, right, which their initiatives are more towards data center IP lists and towards industry-wide blacklists and publisher ID protocols where you kind of run credit checks on your publishers, not just your advertisers. So all these things combined, and then after that point, you get into the really difficult fraud, because up until that point, that's easy fraud, right? Because touching to what you responded to my first question was like, there are barriers to entry. Correct. For the easy, simple hackers. But for the more sophisticated stuff, that's where the practices that we use in addition to new technologies are really necessary. So that's where with sophisticated fraud, you need all the new emerging technologies to come into play, like white ops and moat and double verify and all that, and their efforts to kind of win that war race, arms race with the hackers. And then based off of our business practices and our unified business organizational changes across the industry towards how we use that information to block that. And yes, we're making less revenues, but at the end of the day, we're creating a better environment. That's the end of my rant.
It's a lot of moving parts.
That's really like the only realistic solution. And even then, it's still a continuous process, right? It never stops.
Before we move on and talk more about the solution, I want to do that, but I'm curious, you talked about the numbers, each one of you talked about the numbers before, in terms of the whole industry. How does it affect a single advertiser on a case-to-case basis? Meaning, when let's say a advertiser is putting in, let's give an easy number, $100,000 spent. How much of that $100,000 of traffic that they are buying can, on an individual basis, is there any sense of how much fraud they can expect? Meaning, are they really only getting $85,000 worth of value? Because I'm curious, it really impacts the solution, because if the problem isn't big enough for one advertiser, why worry about a solution at all? Why not just say, okay, cost of doing business?
Right. So I mean, kind of like what Muddy was saying is that he has a lot of different verification vendors, and they're all saying something different, right? So, which is, I see that as well. We use, I think, like 5 or 6 different companies, like all the biggest names in the industry, and everybody's saying something different. This is great, this is terrible traffic, but it's all the same source, right? So it's really difficult. And so you'll have an ad spend, let's say $100,000, to touch back to your question, and maybe 5 or 10% will be marked as fraud, right? So then you go in and you optimize and you try and change it. But then the next day you have 0% based off of one IVT vendor, and then off of a different vendor it says another number, right? So we kind of usually take the worst number out there and kind of be as secure as possible, but that's also something that needs to change in the industry, right? Because if you want to look at like the perfect world, all of the IVT vendors wouldn't look at it as a business model, but they would be sharing the information with each other, and so that they're all kind of saying the same unified thing. Because you have one that's winning the arms race, one that's maybe a little bit behind, one that's way ahead. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
First of all, to your question also, it really depends where he buys that, where he spends that $100,000. He can spend the whole $100,000 with fraud. But I think this is also the main issue here with fraud. Advertisers are always looking to buy the traffic as cheap as they can get. And I'm always saying, if it's too good to be true, then it's probably not true. Because you cannot buy premium inventory for cheap rates. And if you are, you're probably buying fraud. There's a lot of common sense that needs to be implemented from the people who are buying the traffic to the whole chain. Is it from the advertiser to their DSP, agency, the SSP or exchange that they are buying the traffic? Everybody needs to use common sense because tools can get you so far. And as we said all here before, the platforms, they do their job, but you need to also to use your common sense and see what you're buying and take a really good look. Who are your vendors who are supplying you the traffic? Do a really good check on them and where you're buying the platform. This is, I'm coming from, we started off the company in 2011 in Asia, and we built the whole ad server to combat fraud because it was a main issue in Southeast Asia, where there was a lot of fraud there, much more than even in the US, or it's like a standard practice there back then. So you see that when you speak to agencies, they're looking for the cheapest price. And I also think that from that side, once they realize that it doesn't come cheap, then fraudsters will have less to sell their inventory to, and that way it will kind of, it's not going to die, but it's going to die down. The whole fraud thing, it's all about education. And currently you don't really see it.
Meaning, so before we can get to a solution, people have to recognize the issue and see that it does impact them on sort of a day-to-day basis.
Exactly. It impacts everything. You can buy traffic from every. You're going to be. Some platforms are going to have a little fraud because they're doing a good job on handling it. Other platforms who are not. We all remember the Nexus story from 2014, 13. I don't remember 15, where they announced that 60% of the traffic is fraud, and then afterwards they updated it to 75% of the traffic is fraud. So, if you don't do anything, then hackers or fraudsters, they're going to just jump on your platform and do a party over there. You need to really, everybody in the chain, need to check themselves. And I think today advertisers are less. They are kind of relying on their vendors to do it and kind of expecting everybody to do it while they want the cheapest price they can buy. And once that's changed in your state of mind, then the whole issue can be dealt with, I think, in an easier way.
I completely agree. I think the situation today's vendors or platforms are doing efforts. Each one is connected to probably the same guys, more or less. The change will come when the advertisers demand a change. In the end of the day, they are paying the money. Once they understand that's like what you said, cheap doesn't buy you necessarily what you need and what you want, then it can make a change, a complete change. Because in the end of the day, the advertisers maybe need a better set of goals of what they want to achieve. And once they have these goals, they need to find a better way to actually achieve them. Because if they want to say, I don't know, I just want everybody to watch my video, and viewability is good enough for me, that's good enough for me. I want viewability. I would guess that fraudsters would be able to supply this cheat somehow for this. But if he puts more effort in what he actually wants to achieve from the campaign and see that everything he does and everything that the vendor is doing, everything that the DSP or the media agency or whatever needs to execute the campaign backs down to, he would see that without actually a validated traffic, it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. But it needs something a bit more grounded and less vague than just soft targets to measure. Okay, so I think measurements is going to be a big part of what advertisers need to make a kind of a step forward in what they want to achieve from each of their campaign and each of their goals. Okay?
Well, does the fact that they're not complaining or not taking the issue seriously enough suggest that they're still getting the ROI on their campaign? Or do you think they're not getting the ROI on the campaign but blaming it on external factors besides fraud?
It could be this. I also think their definition of ROI is a bit soft in some cases. It's improving lately, but what we used to call, I think a few years back, branded campaigns. And I think branded campaigns, you just wanted to buy impressions. Basically, just wanted to buy impressions and just get the ads out. You didn't really care what's going on, where these impressions are. At best, you had a white list of sites. At best, I think back then. This evolved and changed, and our viewability matrix is very important, and it should. But this viewability still doesn't back up to something that you actually want for the campaign. You want people to, I don't know, you want to have a survey that checks if actually more people are aware of your brand. You want clickers, you want the shoppers, you want something a bit more solid performance, something measurable that you can say, this backs out.
Right, and this gets me to my next question, and which is essentially, when I've dealt with publishers, they're still pricing their inventory based on impressions, based on page views. And my question is whether, at the end of the day, the ad fraud is so great in the digital web because we're using such flimsy metrics. If we were using different types of metrics, would that itself be part of the solution? Or are we really condemned to say, no, when you're advertising online, we're still going to base everything off page views, things that are so easily manipulated by fraud?
I think it's a main part of the problem, but I do see a light in the end of the tunnel, because I see the world moving more and more to audience-based and less page views and exactly the position and the actual site you're buying. Right now it's like a combination. I'm looking for sports fans, so also sites that are related to sports and so forth and so forth. But it moves forward to, I'm looking for sports fans, I don't care when I see them. I'm just looking for them. They can, right now, being a sports site, but they can be reading the news in a cheaper place. Okay, so they don't have to be in CNN.com, they could be in a local news somewhere, where it's the same guy. Okay, I'm looking for the guy, not looking for a specific site. And in this sense, it gives an opportunity for advertisers to get what they want, to get the users they want. Not necessarily in the prices they had to buy in, but it gives them a chance to actually bax whatever ROI they want on a specific user, maybe to somewhere else. And it does give them like a leniency or a playground a bit bigger to play in.
Going to what you said, what we're speaking here about KPIs, it's okay to have general KPIs. You know, some brands are basically looking to brainwash the users. 2015, I ran a campaign for Snickers bar in the US, where they decided, they said, instead of targeting audience and targeting specific sites that are relevant, I just want my ad to be played. I just want everybody to see banners of Snickers bars, but they had, like Noam said, they had a real KPI behind it. They were connecting it to the sales 2 months later, and they saw an uplift. They ran a campaign for a whole month where just they flooded the internet with the banner ads, but they had true metrics behind it. And you can see that they found the vendors that weren't really matching up to the KPI that they were looking for, and they found vendors that were. And I think this is one step into understanding what are your KPIs or what you are looking for to do to combat fraud. Because the vendors that were selling them cheap traffic, so-called premium but cheap traffic, weren't really bringing the results. And they tested out for half a year. They ran like with 5 different vendors, they did it in order to really find the good vendors, and the campaign was in general successful to them. So I'm always saying you can have like a general campaign, but you really need to connect it to your KPIs behind it. A lot of advertisers are not doing it. And when you said about page views and stuff like that, there is also a real battle, and I think this is where fraudsters really jump in the middle. Publishers want to make money, and they want to charge you CPM for it. Of course, if
they're not very good at it.
They're not very good at it, but this is what they want. And of course, it would be ideal if we could only pay on a CPI basis or whatever metric that is really good for us. But then publishers would have a problem and not make money. And then that's another issue. So there is this like common ground that an advertiser needs to understand that it's not nobody's responsibility to bring them the results. It's their responsibility, and they need to pay for it. And if they try to look for it cheap, and if they try to I don't know how you say it in English, like to cut the corners, and you're trying to cut the corners in order to get your results, you're gonna reach those guys who are trying to sell you that fake traffic. I think today, until there will be standardization in the industry with verification platforms, I think what I'm seeing, a lot of the platforms are really trying to take full responsibility about the traffic that they are selling to their advertisers. They're doing the best they can, but it's also very difficult if you're working with one vendor and he's working with another to really match to those results. So everybody thinks it's a fraudulent problem, but I think it starts with the advertisers and their knowledge and understanding, and then it will trickle down to the whole chain.
Right. It seems that, Joe, I want to get to you with this, but it seems with publishers there's two separate problems. You mentioned, you and I joke that they're not very good at making money, but the second problem is they've got no incentive for transparency, unless they consider themselves a premium solution, in which case the transparency matters. The other problem, and this is where I want to start with Joey, is these competitors are indirectly competing with Facebook and Google, and they're not really of the size and capability to do that unless they're part of a greater network. And this is the question about, as we see more ad dollars being shifted over to social, is the problem of fraud as pronounced on social platforms, and is it getting there? To the point where when the advertiser is looking at all the reasons why I shouldn't spend on simple CPMs and just simply spend my ad revenue dollars with social platforms like Facebook, is fraud now playing into that as well?
So with all these big powerhouse social platforms like Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, you kind of have a walled garden problem, right? So like the transparency that they're providing isn't even on the level that's needed for this to be realistic. So you can't really tell what exactly the percentage of fraud on even their platforms are as well.
They're the perpetrators of fraud, because every
Right.
time you scroll past a video, it counts you as a viewer,
Right.
and Facebook offers no real transparency on that either.
Right, exactly. And so I think it was last week or something like that, there was an article about a bunch of agencies that were pulling their budgets from Google, from YouTube, because of this walled garden problem, because they weren't really getting the transparency of knowing where their ads were playing in the level of granularity that other companies like us maybe can provide to them. Now, like to go back into what you guys were talking about, I do think that the metrics they're using, maybe they're a little bit kind of outdated, clicks and impressions and all that stuff. But at the same time, whatever metrics you're going to be using to monitor your performance of your advertisers or their KPIs, I think you're still going to have a problem, right? You're still going to have somebody trying to get their foot in the door, even if it's a different metric. Even if it's a viewability metric that, only if the user sees the ad for X seconds will this actually count as a revenue income. Even then, you'll have some sort of futuristic, problematic parties creating fraud to do stuff like that. So it's a never-ending cycle, right?
You mentioned Facebook. I think Facebook has a huge fraud problem, a just as you guys said, it's a closed garden, so nobody really speaks about it, and nobody really knows it. But the amount of fake users who are kind of watching ads for money that everybody's speaking today, especially in the US, it all comes out of Facebook. And people, everybody looks
Fake news, now we're talking about fake traffic.
Exactly. So there are fake users there who are creating fake clicks and fake views, and these are not really the audience that you want to buy, but everybody buys them because you don't know, and everybody trusts. If you look at advertisers and you speak to them, especially in less educated market, even here in Israel, when you speak to agencies and you ask them where they're going to spend their budget, automatically they tell you Facebook and YouTube, because these are the trusted platforms that they know and that people, communicate to them. So they spend more money there, but they're not really checking. And what happened with Google in the last 2 weeks, I think, is a great example of today. People, advertisers are trying to lift the screen also on those two big guys who are always known as the most trusted platforms, and there's no fraud there, and you can always trust Google and Facebook to do the right thing. I think they also have a big part in this whole fraud industry.
No.
What they say sums it up. I have no.
So, tell me, with what we know about the industry right now and the realities that we've discussed, what are your best practices? I mean, you've mentioned already, Mandi, the idea of if it looks too good to be true, then it probably isn't. But what are some of the ways that you counsel your customers to think about their ad spend to avoid the fraud, so that they don't end up in the great majority of people who are affected by the fraud issue?
Well, first of all, the advice, as I said before, if it's too cheap, don't buy it. And if it's cheap and it's with amazing result, don't buy it. It's not true.
Is there a more sophisticated checklist than that, or is it really just?
This is the advice I give to our clients. But the way we.
But when they pay you, let's talk.
Exactly. And when they pay us, well, basically, our ad server, we see everything in real time, and when every impression gets in, we have a tool called VGT. It's a video guard technology, where basically on every impression we check it. And if we suspect that this impression is bogus, it's not real, it's fake, by any terms, it could be injection traffic, it could be bot traffic, it could even doesn't really the impression that's coming in seems that coming from a page, when you see a lot of impressions coming from about us page or a private policy page or something like that. It's kind of suspicious to us. Then we contain that impression and not sell it off to the advertiser. And then we deal with it internally. We either we pay for it, but it's not something that we want to pass over to the advertiser. On top of it, we are using third-party verification tools, because these are the names the advertisers like to hear, in order to really double-check ourselves to see that we're not doing anything suspicious. And also looking at our platform, when we see a spike, we see everything in real time. When we see a spike, we kind of spike in terms of spend. If we see an advertiser buying like a specific traffic, in real time we see a spike goes up and he's buying a lot more of it, we kind of check what that traffic is, because usually when there are spikes, there's fraud involved around it. So we're trying to take as much responsibility as we can on our platform, in order not to even give it as an option to them. So we try to keep our reports empty.
And do you think that that's going to be one of the main values that a media agency, because the media agencies are always evolving to provide values, but at the end of the day we are middlemen. Is that ultimately the solution, that you need to be working with a media agency who at least understands these issues, has published about them, and can speak intelligently about them?
I think so. I think so.
As self-serving as that is, I understand.
Yeah, but I'm saying, it all starts with taking some responsibility. I'm saying it also as a person, that works with my team. I'm saying when you're doing good stuff, take responsibility. When you're doing bad stuff, take responsibility. And that's the whole method that we're implementing on our platform. is take responsibility for what you're selling. Once you do it, over time, you see that the partners will grow their budget with you because they feel they can trust you. And this is what I'm saying about common sense. When you get to a trust with a vendor, that you know he's taking responsibility, and mistakes can happen, and they always do happen, but he takes responsibility for it, then you know it's a partner that you can keep working with and grow your relationship. You know, a lot of companies, I think today less, but maybe 2 years ago or 1 year ago, they were trying to make money, easy money. And you try just to sell in order to, you know, to make more, then stuff happens. And then, you know, agencies will cut you off. I think it's not like I don't think revealing any, you know, any secret here. It's something that's very known and it's common practice. And this is why I'm always saying it's common sense at the end of the day.
Joey, other best practices?
Yes, so my approach is a little bit kind of extreme, right? Like, since we opened our company, we've always been very, very against fraud because it's a big problem in our industry, and we work with as many IVT protectors as we can. So we work with White Ops, we work with Moat, and we work with Forensic, and we work with FraudLogix, and we work with Protected, which is an Israeli company. Yeah, we're over there. And we're always like exploring new and different ways to kind of, you know, protect our advertisers and our agency partnerships. So in addition to that, you have like, because those are like the specialists. Those are the guys that are winning the arms race, hopefully. But in addition, you have the, you know, IP block lists, industry-wide blacklists. And just, you know, kind of making sure that the partners that you work with, kind of like what you were saying, are also monitoring their traffic, are also actively fighting this war against ad fraud, and like that's the only way that you can really win, right? It's transparency and everybody working together to kind of reach that solution.
Yeah. Just to add to these two, we started taking a new approach in which we started off in this approach of all the vendors. It came from the premium DSPs that connected to the exchange, but as soon as we got it in, we started working with all the partners to bring the knowledge of how to actually utilize these matrix. And now the next step for us is we actively go to our demand partners, mainly DSPs and agencies, and we ask for them to give us KPIs on what they're looking for. And then what we do is we analyze the exchange media, and we kind of close private marketplaces for them, in which we try to back as much from the huge amount of traffic that there's out there. We try to find them the KPIs that they want with a kind of a protected, verified at least, I'm not sure protected all the way, it's kind of a good thing to say, but at least verified media that can give them what they're looking for. And each one of them is different. One is a CPI, one is more branded and looks for something else. But we are looking to get what they want to achieve as an exchange. And we do try to enclose environments for them to achieve these. Okay, it's not like a complete open Wild West where you just throw an impression. If it gets through a verification tools, it's cool. We did this last year, it works. It's not such a bad solution, okay? So we have vendors connected, and they do check the traffic. But now we focus more and more on KPI-specific goals that we want to achieve, and then enclose some areas in the exchange that can actually give some benefit to the DSPs or agencies.
We're about to wrap up, but before we do, any questions from the audience for our panelists? Okay. That means we did a really good job. Thank you to each of our panelists. I really appreciate the insights.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having us.